Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Hello out there. Good morning. The Provincetown International Film Festival is happening next week, June 12th through the 16th, so you can get your tickets at provincetownfilm.org. We're going to be speaking with some filmmakers today and next week on Thursday at 9 a.m. as well, so stay tuned. My first guest today is award-winning filmmaker Shuchi Talati from India, whose work challenges dominant narratives around gender, sexuality, and South Asian identity. She has an MFA from the American Film Institute. Her feature film, Girls Will Be Girls, won the Sundance Audience Award and Special Jury Award, among others. It will be playing in Provincetown Thursday, June 13th at 11 a.m. at Water's Edge Cinema and Saturday, June 15th at 3:30 at Water's Edge Cinema 2. She is a graduate of the American Film Institute. She lives in New York City and is a member of the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective, the Bichitra Collective, and the Freelance Solidarity Project.
My film Girls Will Be Girls is a story about a 17-year-old girl, Meera, who is a senior in a very strict boarding school in the Himalayan mountains. And it's the kind of school where, forget dating, but, even wearing, a skirt that is slightly shorter or talking too much to a boy can get you into trouble, especially if you're a girl. All the policing is for girls and not really for the boys. And so Meera is the head prefect of the school, which means that she's in charge of enforcing these rules. And then she gets into trouble because she falls in love with a new boy who's more worldly, he's traveled abroad, and he thinks the school is kind of parochial. So she's hiding this secret from everyone at school and also her mom, who then finds out about the relationship. And surprisingly, she says to Meera, I don't want you to hide things from me. I want to meet this boy, so bring him home. And so Meera brings her boyfriend home, and her mother takes a shine to him, and then progressively gets more friendly with him, which makes things complicated. And this story for me, this mother-daughter relationship, is very rich and interesting because on the one hand, the mom, who's a young mom, wants to give her daughter the freedoms that she didn't have. So the mother never had a chance to date. The first boy she sort of had a relationship with, she had to marry. So she's trying to give her daughter these freedoms. If her dad, the film is set in the 90s in India, a time where the Indian economy was changing. And for the first time, you could get Western exports. So you could, buy your first pair of Levi's and you could wear a mini skirt. And so all of these things became a sign of rebellion if you were a teenager then. So this mother is also helping her daughter buy a mini skirt, which would be frowned upon by many people because it's against quote unquote, Indian morality. And while she's trying to do all of this, you also feel that she has a deep sadness and a longing for a youth that she did not get. So there's also a envy. She also wants to dress young. She also wants to be friendly with Meera's friends and be considered young and hip and cool. And she wants attention from this boy, the boyfriend. In her life, she's relegated to a supporting role. She's secondary to husband and daughter. And here's this young man who gives her some kind of attention, sees her as a person, says, tell me about your school, tell me about your life. And it's something that she really doesn't get. So there's really this kind of tension, which I think on the one hand is very culturally specific because it's a quite repressive culture for women, especially when it comes to their sexuality. But on the other hand, I feel in every culture where each generation of women has more freedoms, hopefully, than the previous, then the older women, how can they not feel a longing? How can they not feel some sense of envy when they see their daughter's generation having more freedoms than they did? So in some ways, I also find that to be quite universal and wanted to explore that, both this pride and this envy.
What's the response been so far?
And this
So
film so far has screened in so many places, and there are all these young women of different cultures who I find so moving. I mean, they will just come and they will say, "Thank you, thank you for making this film. I feel seen." And to me, it's very moving because, like, in a way, I made it so specific to, like, my growing up and, like, a school in India. But to know that, like, I don't know, it's both moving and sad, I guess, that this is our experience still.
your actors are fantastic and so naturalistic. What was the casting process like?
The casting was a long process and tough because, we two of our leads are young. We knew they were going to be actors who may not have acted before, and we needed to do a big, wide search. So I was lucky to work with this amazing casting director who's quite a veteran in India. His name is Dilip Shankar, and he's cast like Meera Nair's films, and he's just been in the business for a really long time. But he's also like a theater veteran, so he knows kind of both the Bollywood side and the theater side. So we did audition. There are a lot of young actors in India because it's such a big film industry who do have credits, and we auditioned a lot of them. But somehow it was just like I was looking for this kind of aliveness that we didn't find, and so we started doing open calls in colleges. And Preeti Panigrahi, who plays Meera, really came through one of these. And we were both immediately blown away because the audition scene was this scene where Meera meets and her love interest. They talk for the first time, and there's a little bit of flirtation at this astronomy club on this rooftop under the stars. And many of the girls who auditioned played it kind of coy. They would bat their eyelids and I was like, that's just not Meera. And when Preeti played it, she just had this strength about her where it was kind of like, I like this boy, but I will not debase myself. I have this like dignity, I am the head prefect. And I was like, yes, this is Meera, because to me, she's a very, very strong character. And so we found her through that. And then Keshav Binoy Kiran, who plays Shri, also came through an open call and had not acted before. But Shri, the boyfriend, has to walk this tightrope where he's both kind of charming and, draws her out, draws Meera out and opens up all these worlds for her. And is a little worldly where maybe you feel a little uncomfortable that he's more experienced than her, but he also has this niceness and this vulnerability underneath it. And to kind of tread that tightrope we found like a hard thing to find, because sometimes like if the boys played it too charming, you are immediately like, oh no, stay away from that. You feel that for Meera. And if they were too nice, then there wasn't this sense, this seemed like too much of a boy that the mom would not be interested in talking to him. So he had to appeal both to the daughter and the mother and then thread this perfect line. So I'm so delighted they just appeared, in time, because in a way you feel like, okay, these actors are out there. I know my Meera and my Shri are out there, but I hope I will find them on our timelines. That's the big, like, kind of scary thing. And the mom, Kani Kusruti, I have been a fan of her work for a while. She's just amazing. She has this aliveness that I'm talking about. It's like this live wire quality where you keep watching her and you do not know what she's going to do next. Is she going to smile? Is she going to fly off the handle? She really puts you on edge, which is what you really needed for this mom character. And Gunny actually she also was in this amazing film by Payal Kapadia, All We Imagine As Light, that just won the Grand Jury Prize at Cannes. So yeah, I'm so excited for her. She's an amazing, amazing actor.
Can you talk about creating this safe space for your actors with an almost all female crew?
Yeah. So because this film deals with a, young girl's sexuality, I wanted to create a space where, the actors would feel comfortable. And so we tried to create as, So we tried to do that by getting as many women on set as possible, as many heads of department that are women, because it was a huge challenge. There are many film sets around the world are quite male, but there are certain departments that where it's very rare to find women. Like, for instance, there are very few women who work in sound. There are very few women who work in the lighting departments. So, and in India, you can imagine that it's much more male. This gender disparity in the film set is even more stark. So, as we were beginning to do this, we realized there were some positions where we would just not find women. Like, for instance, the lighting department. Uh, there was maybe one woman that we found who had been working as a gaffer, that is the chief lighting technician, who seemed to have retired. So we really couldn't find a female gaffer. And so while we were kind of just wondering what we should do, a co-producer on our film, Tanya Negi, she said, "Oh, what if we do a training program for women who want to learn cinema lighting?" Which was an amazing idea, also terrifying, because we were all making, this is my first feature film. We were in the middle of production, the pre-production of a film, and we don't know how to run a training program. But it seemed like such a good idea that we kind of we applied for a grant, and we started talking to lighting companies in India to see if someone would partner with us. And it was, you kind of, sometimes when you try an idea that has not been done before, you kind of don't know if there's going to be any support for it. But we did get some grant funding, and then Light and Light, one of India's biggest lighting rental houses, was like, "Yes, we will support you. We will offer you space. We will offer you teachers to train women." So we put the word out, and 40 women applied, and we were able to train 9 to work in cinema lighting. And one of them ended up working on our set of Girls Will Be Girls, and a few of them are still working. They're working as gaffers in the Indian film industry, and that's so amazing. So this program is called Undercurrent Lab, and we are now doing the second edition.
Why did you choose to have a mostly female crew?
So relate to what you're saying, because it's like, in some ways, this idea of creating a set that was mostly women was also for the crew as much as it was for the actors. Because I think with many women, if you're used to being in more male spaces, you kind of have this armor that you put on, and you spend all this mental energy on this, kind of trying, just being on alert. And I've been in more female spaces, where sets that are mostly women, where it feels like you can take a collective exhale. You're going to put down that armor, put down that defensive, that defense, the readiness to defend yourself, and then just do the work. And so I think it was also like a gift for us. And then in that like container, really allowed these young actors to do very vulnerable work. So of course there were still men on set, because it's just impossible, in some, there's just not women like drivers or things like that, and for Indian sets. So, but whenever we would do an intimate scene, it would be only women. And suddenly this energy would shift, and it became just so much more intimate and playful and safe. And some of those scenes were my favorite scenes to shoot, because it just, I do like working with smaller crews. And then because of the intimacy of that space, like for instance, there's a scene where Mira masturbates, and with all these women on set, it was so fun, because it was like everyone had tips about how to masturbate using a teddy bear. Or like there's a scene between Mira and her boyfriend, which I call the sexy studying scene, where these two teenagers are studying, but things get they start to get naughty. And because of this like cocoon of safety, both the actors could be so playful. You feel that in their performances. There's really so much trust between both of them and the crew. And I'm kind of, I think it's like essential when actors have to do their work live on set and be so vulnerable, that it really behooves us to support it and to make it safe and to make sure that they can stop at any point and say, no, that touch doesn't feel good. That camera angle doesn't, like, I don't want to be seen that way. I don't want to be photographed that way. And to create space for that so that they can always say no and you can change the plan. So you schedule a lot of time around it. You're not trying to rush them through anything. And it's very scary as a maker to give your actors that freedom that they can withdraw their consent at any point, even though they've read the script, you've done the rehearsal, you've taken photographs of what shots you're thinking of taking, and you've shown them so they have a sense of how they will appear on screen. And yet, you want to leave the door open and say, on set, on the day, if you don't want to do this, you can tell me, and
But
we changed the angle one time. I think one time we had framed up a shot and we took a photograph and we showed it to the actors, and one of them was like, I don't feel totally comfortable with that. And so we reset. But reset means to move the camera. It means to change the lighting, but I think that's what it takes so that actors come out of these feeling empowered and not like somehow violated.
Can you talk about your approach to intimacy?
The gaze, we talked so much with the cinematographer of my film, Julie Peng, who is a dear friend. She's a longtime collaborator. She shot my last short film called A Period Piece, which is about an afternoon of period sex, which gets a little messy. So she and I have worked on films with intimacy before and sort of have developed this language. And we talked a lot about Girls Will Be Girls, where we are like, we're photographing a teenage girl's sexuality. How do we do it in a way that is frank? Because we do think it's important to be frank and not coy about this, because, because I said I grew up in a culture which treated it with so much shame that the frankness is a political act, so we want to be frank, but we don't want to be exploitative, so how do we photograph this in a way that is respectful? And the way I talk to the actors about it and also to Julie about it is, for me, each sexual encounter really is no different than a conversation, There's a lot of emotional content. we are not just physically naked, but we're emotionally naked. It's very vulnerable. If you can easily hurt someone, just like, I think even if it's a long-time partner, you make an advance and they don't respond as quickly as you would like them to, you are stung. You can express anger. Relationships change, especially early on in the relationships. You can build trust or you can erode trust based on how these encounters go and how cared for you feel. And so I talked really to the actors about what was important to me was to film these as an emotional exchange. And during each encounter, their relationship changes. They learn something about each other. They feel differently about each other. And I think also to try and photograph that, that's what we're trying to photograph. We're not trying to photograph breasts and butts and titillate people. And I think that's why also the gaze feels really different. The intent is different. And this is something that I wish that I saw a lot more of. I feel like sexuality is often not treated with that, with nuance in that way. Even when it's photographed tastefully, it doesn't feel like an emotional exchange to me. Often it's like a romance is progressing, and then the story stops, they have sex, and then the story continues. But why? That's just not my experience of it in life.
No One Asked You follows comedian disruptor Liz Winstead, co-creator of The Daily Show, and other comedians with the Abortion Access Front as it crisscrosses the U.S., supporting abortion clinic staff and destigmatizing abortion through comedy.
Anything that you could do to help a clinic is radical.
You're really good at it!
Because people do not want these clinics to exist.
Sometimes their families don't know that they work there because there's tension about how people feel about abortion. So those people that you work with also have to be your compatriots.
Cute. This is how you party with abortion people. They bring out a gurney and they use it as a bar.
Good. When does your HGTV show premiere?
Any minute.
Even if you guys like just took everything away and walked away right now, it still looks like 100 times better.
If you would have said, we want to get a room painted, we would have done that. Think big. It occurs to me you don't have a hot tub in your driveway. I think we'll put one there. At every single clinic, somebody would say, thanks for coming. No one ever comes here.
So tell us how this film came to be, how you first connected with Liz Winstead, who is the co-creator of The Daily Show. And she's the subject and leader or host of the Abortion Access Front and Vaginal Mystery Tour. We caught up with No One Asked You director Ruth Leitman, an award-winning filmmaker recognized for highlighting social justice issues and feature documentaries over the last 25 years with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation, Paul Robeson Fund, Tribeca Film Institute, Fledgling Fund, and Illinois Humanities Council. In 2016, she was named in British Film Institute, Sight and Sound Magazine's The Female Gaze 100 Overlooked Films Directed by Women.
So I connected with Liz in 2012. I met her for the first time in 2012. I was at Netroots Nation, which is, a conference that happens every year, and it's sort of the best of grassroots organizing on the net. And I was there with an immigration documentary, proud to say. We were a thorn in the side of the Department of Homeland Security the year our film came out, because we like to take sort of unlikely subjects and, likely subjects actually, and sort of have a different view of them. And, at the time, and also still now, it hasn't changed, immigration is this very sort of misunderstood situation going on in this country, and has been for decades. And so Liz was there. That's probably a long-winded way to talk about that. But Liz was there with her new book. She had a book of essays that she published at that time, Liz Free or Die. And in that book, she tells her abortion story. And I was in an essay form, and I was so inspired by that story and the way that she told it. And I had always been a fan of hers and the work that she did with The Daily Show, and how most people don't know that two women created The Daily Show. Wouldn't know that from people who host it. And so I, was really inspired by her and her work. And then cut to 4 years later, I had always enjoyed seeing her, as a commentator on MSNBC and other news shows. Whenever things would get really horrible, Liz would show up on the news to talk about it in a way, and to frame it in a way that just shows, how preposterous the things that were going on were, and to put a comedic spin on it. And so, honestly, especially in light of the way that the sort of framing of your show, I needed a lifeline. I needed something that was going to help me get through that time when Trump was elected. And stakeholders, myself, others, obviously we knew that things were about to get a lot worse in a lot of different areas, and specifically repro and abortion access. Did we know that things would get the way that they did and how they got that way? No, certainly not. But we knew that things were going to get a lot worse. And so, for me, I approached Liz and her communications director at the time, Nicole Moore, about following them. Fortunately for us, they were about to go on the Vaginal Mystery Tour.
Bodily autonomy, sovereignty, and a woman's agency is medicine for her mind, body, and soul. Was making this documentary, No One Asked You, good medicine?
For me and for our team, making this film was a lot of medicine for the melancholy. around what was happening. And, we're a country that's really definitely divided politically, but we're not really that very divided about abortion. Most people support abortion in this country, and I don't care what political party you're from. So, right. So we have this thing that is incredibly popular because it does turn out that people don't want to give up control of their agency over their own lives, whether it's bodily autonomy or other things. People want to be able to have the say over their own lives. So the fact that, this has become so politicized and that was, the underpinnings for decades, is so troubling. And so we look at, when we look at Massachusetts, right? And this is an important thing to talk about, when we're there, and that listeners in Massachusetts really need to understand is that, unfortunately, even though abortion is a lot more accessible in Massachusetts that maybe than other places, there is no state, there is no place that it is okay and that it is fine, because when abortion isn't accessible to everyone, it's not accessible. And so, and because it is very accessible in Massachusetts, it's one of those places that people are going to come to. So, if somebody is sort of complacent in the idea that, well, I live in Massachusetts, I'm going to be fine. What about if you get pregnant and you go to try to get an abortion and there's no appointments because people are coming there from surrounding states? And that's what we need to think about when we think about the quote unquote, I'm air quoting, the safe states, because there are none. And so I think that, depending on where you live, and it is really like a live game of whack-a-mole right now with we talk about, we write proposals for our impact campaign, which we're going out with, and those things change every day because literally, I'm not even going to say every day, I'm going to say by the hour, something new will come up in some place, whether it's the determination of abortion pills being a controlled substance in Louisiana, or something that's happening, a ballot initiative that's happening in Florida, and then in a lower court, something happening, elsewhere in Florida. It's active because abortion access has become, fair game in this country. And that's really sad that somehow we were able to allow, not demand enough that this only be looked at and determined through the lens of healthcare. And the fact that we allowed it to be chipped away at for decades is why we find ourselves where we are right now. So it was really important to us to make a film that had it was really important to us to make a film where we could show an audience what they can do, because no one's happy with losing all of our rights, right? No one's happy about that. So we have, and people feel helpless, and people feel like they didn't do enough, and people feel like they don't know what to do. And so we wanted to make a film that showed ordinary people that they could, if they have 5 hours a month, that they could do this, that they could have, a postcard writing party with their friends, that they could volunteer, that there's so, at an abortion clinic doing, escorting, that there's so many things that they can do. And so that people don't feel helpless, because this is a long game. This is a long haul. And I think people need to, in order for people to activate, they need to feel like what they're doing is working. So,
that was Ruth Leitman. My full interview with her will be podcast on healingwisdomradioshow.com. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. No One Asked You is screening at the Provincetown Film Festival Thursday, June 13th at 4 p.m. and Saturday, June 15th at 1:30 p.m. at the Water's Edge Cinema. And you can find tickets to that and other documentaries and narrative films at provincetownfilm.org. You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at pandora@WOMR.org.